This is the Fujifilm X-T30 Mark II, a camera released back in September 2021, so nearly 4 years old. And I think at the moment, this is Fuji's best everyday camera or street photography camera you can buy. And that's what I'm going to explain to you in this episode. A lot of opinions, also quite a few comments from you from previous episodes. You can watch my Fujifilm X-T30 playlist here later on if you're interested. And in this video, if you at some stage are enjoying this, please consider subscribing, but let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. This is not a tech review, but a little bit of specking we need to do. 26.1 megapixel sensor, X-Trans 4 sensor, 425 autofocusing points, burst mode 8 frames per second, mechanical 30 frames per second, electronic with a little crop. Now back to 2025. This camera obviously has some new competition, most notably the Fujifilm X100 Mark VI, XT50 and XM5, not to speak of the OM3 and other cameras being released, all aimed at small point-and-shoot cameras. And I think the biggest difference between the X-Trans 5 sensor and the X-Trans 4 sensor is that Fuji decided to implement artificial intelligence for autofocusing. Now, you know, if you see this episode here, that I really don't like that direction. So I think with the XT4, you get you get the last of the Mohicans stable sensor. All the firmware upgrades have been done by now. I don't expect this to get upgraded anymore or updated. But this is robust. You know what you can expect from it. Doesn't overheat either. Obviously, the new X-Trans 5 cameras are technologically way more advanced. They come with IBIS, at least some of them. They come with 6K open gate. But, you know, you don't choose this camera because you want to shoot video. You choose this camera, you want to do photography. And this 26.1 megapixel sensor is more than enough. You know, people were raving about it a couple of years ago, so why should it be bad now? It's just a tool, this camera. It's small, the ergonomics are okay, but it's great at what it does. Everyday camera. One other thing, when it comes to the film sims in here, you're only missing one, that's a Reala Ace, but you've got Eterna, you've got the Negs. Very important. And everybody still loves the X100 V or Mark V. You can see the prices at MPB, really high. Now let's go a bit into the shooting experience here. First we look at the ergonomics. The ergonomics on this camera are okay. As you can see, I have two, maybe if I'm lucky, 3 fingers here. It's not perfect, but it's the fact that it's very small here. Very, very small. You have the lovely flash. I think that's something that a lot of people still underestimate until this day. I also think having 7 slots to really have your Fujifilm recipes in is fantastic. I love the Agfa Optima 200, for instance. The annoying placement of the Q button, yeah, this is something you can easily switch off. I would suggest anybody to do it. But this camera is also pretty inconspicuous. If people see you walking with this, most of the time they think it's a Kodak or a film camera. In terms of usability, capability, great. It doesn't have weather sealing, and that's also been something that you in the comments have pretty much asked about. And I think the best comment I got from this chap here, I won't mention his name, who is from India, and he shoots in what I would call weather conditions, which are basically a furnace, 40 degrees or higher Celsius, that is. And he's walking around with this camera. He's doing a little bit of wildlife. He documents his life, and he's never had any issues with either dust or moist getting into it. That's what I found, like, wow, in India, 40 degrees, it's warm, people. And we also had various people commenting from the UK or other parts of the world where it's a little bit wetter and they kind of feel anxious about it. But the entire discussion here on YouTube as well regarding weather sealing, I'd always say that dust is a bigger enemy than water, but if you're in torrential rain somewhere in northern Scotland, you might have a very different opinion. So let me know in the comments below, guys. Now the next thing here is, what lenses do you use? Yeah, but there was also a lot of questions from you here, 2 actually. Birding and no IBIS. Now on the wide angle of lenses, I normally use the 16mm or the 27mm Mark I, the little pancakey lens. fantastic. You see an episode here of what I really use, but I'm also a big fan of the 56mm, which is roughly 85 on full frame. Fantastic. Got quite a few of those as well. But those are not lenses you normally use for birding. For birding you normally start, I guess, at the full frame 70 to 200 all the way 200 to 600. I don't have those lenses, but I do have the 90mm. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is, if you use that on this camera, in my experience, it's a big, bulky, heavy lens. And after an hour or two, it really starts annoying me because the camera continuously flips. And I even have that with my 18 to 55 and my 10 to 24. It's the same after a couple of times. The ergonomics aren't very good. So from a birding perspective, I think you can use this camera technically. You can go up to 30 frames per second. The autofocus you can probably calibrate to do a very good job. But I just wouldn't be happy walking around with this little body. I would more go for an XT1 until 4 or 5 even. So for me, birding with this camera, maybe not the best. A lot of you have also commented that I wish that it would have IBIS. Now you see that in some of the later models, normally you would have the XT4. To be very honest, the IBIS part for me has never been an issue on this camera, even on lower shutter speeds. And what I normally do is I don't sacrifice my shutter speed, I just crank up the ISO, and you can in post remove a bit, and I think the ISO handling on this camera is pretty awesome. Let's talk about the price now. Because new, these were $9.99 here in Western Europe, at least where I live. Nowadays I see them, you can pick them up for about 700 to 650, 750 on the used market. And if you look at what you're getting in this camera in terms of technology, I stated it in my previous episodes, this camera can go on for years and I still feel that way. I think that is money here on the X-Trans 4 sensor is better spent than on the X-Trans 5 sensor. And that's mainly to do with all the weird algorithmic artificial intelligence shite they put into it. This here is an excellent bang for buck. It's a really enjoyable little camera where you can have great little lenses on, not heavy. This is the Viltrox 56. And I also feel that if you look at, for instance, prices like the X70, quite old camera, I have it 800. Fujifilm X100 Mark V, still 14 to 1500 bucks. That's amazing to me. So this for 750, mounted 27 onto it. Nice, nice. 16mm, even a bigger lens. Fantastic value for money. So that's it for today, guys.